Ooh. Okay, what else?
Yeah, excuse me. I've been looking for a game like this. Like, do you know what it's called?
Oh, this?
Uh-huh.
This is called Lust Goddess. It's
Mhm.
actually a game.
Okay.
You know?
Bro, my PC, I don't know if I could run something like this. Is it low frame?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually a game.
Right.
Trust me, bro. If you got skills, how old are you?
I'm 19.
Ah, you the same age as my oldest grandkids. Like I said, you got skills, they don't cheat. They be tripping with that shit. But anyway, but like I said, you gotta push them to that.
Right.
Because they don't want you hurting the other player. Because see, this has got player versus player in it.
How?
You'll see. It's
Okay.
called Lust Goddess.
Lust Goddess?
Yeah, and I'm saying it's like anyway. So and what they gonna stop you from running through this move if you got bad skills. The point is these are people on your team.
Yeah, yeah.
Teammates. And there's dudes too, but they never talk about them or show them.
Right,
That's
right.
good.
Because that don't matter, you know?
Right. I'm not about that shit. Anyway, so let's keep it 100. The more you fuck them, the better they get. The more you fuck them, the better they get.
Yeah.
Okay. I bought your merch, a hoodie, and a shirt. I'm in Ireland, so not only was the shipping expensive, but I had to spend an extra €40 because of the freaking tariff shenanigans. And you know what? That's okay, because you're amazing. Keep doing you. Wow, thanks, Moserix. #1 fan. Wait, what is this? Where I'm getting coffee and listening to Kafka be unhinged. This guy is insane. I have no history of international travel. My family beyond immediate all lives outside the country of Lameo. Oh, I think if you're surprised that a border guard is asking you questions about, like, what do you do for work? I think that demonstrates the lack of having ever been, I don't know how else to say that. There's something else to say. I don't know. The libertarian delusion is that there is a large political constituency for their ideology. It does not exist. Libertarians have never performed nationally above a number rounding to 0. And when libertarians run for president within the GOP, they are the first ones out. Damn. Stephen Miller going hard. I think you're relying on microphones to do the heavy lifting a bit too much. Shotguns have amazing rejection, but if the room is echoey, it will sound that way. Dynamic mics won't fix that. Well, I don't think shotguns are appropriate to use like in an indoor setting where I like downstairs in the studio. That's why I just don't think it's an appropriate tool for that. Destiny, so that means he lied. That solves that, which means he's bad faith. Wait, lied about what? What's this?
Senator Paul said that this was Senator Paul said that this was that your vote was a bailout for Alaska at the expense of the rest of the country.
He means because saying he travels a lot is proof he has bad faith and not. Well, he might not travel. His family might only travel, or he might have traveled and he's never gotten actually pulled aside for questioning before. Maybe. I mean, it's possible. It doesn't happen all the time. It just depends.
That's what Senator Paul said.
My question was easy. Senator, we've got the.
I didn't say it, ma'am. I'm just asking for your response.
Is she okay?
My response is I have an obligation to the people of the state of Alaska. And I live up to that every single day.
Can you give us the 1-minute rundown of the big, beautiful bill situation? It's a spending bill. I don't know what you want me to say. The budget and the deficit goes up. There's a fuck ton of spending, a lot of money for ICE. It makes permanent all the Trump tax cuts without pairing it with that many spending cuts. The spending cuts that they are making seem to be centered on kind of on like Medicaid and one other thing. I don't remember, but it's just more deficit spending from out of control government that doesn't want to make any spending cuts with like real ones. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Fight for my state's interests. And I make sure that Alaskans are understood. I work hard to take care of a state that has more unique.
I made that post in your subreddit that got hot and then deleted. Why do you and your mods do this? What was the post about?
Situations, more unique people, and it's just different. And so when people suggest that federal...
I don't think it makes them permanent, just a 10-year timeline like the rest. Wait, I thought this makes the Trump tax cuts permanent, like permanently makes them our new tax brackets.
...dollars go to one of our 50 states in a, quote, bailout. I find that offensive. I advocated for my state's interests. I will continue to do that, and I
How much
will
money did the tax cuts save you? I don't know. Is there an online calculator?
make no excuses for doing that. Do I like this bill? No, because I tried to take care of Alaska's interests. But I know that in many parts of the country, there are Americans that are not going to be advantaged by this bill. I don't like that. I don't like the fact there are Americans that are not going to be advantaged by this bill. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that we moved through an artificial deadline, an artificial timeline to produce something, to meet a deadline, rather than to actually try to produce the best bill for the country. But when I saw the direction that this is going, you can either say, I don't like it, not try to help my state, or you can roll up your sleeves.
You're right. It makes the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent if you trust Insurance Newsnet. Okay. I mean, she voted for it, yeah. So, or she's going to. She did vote for it. Yeah, she did vote for it. So who the fuck cares? Good one. The line which I hear that I'm hoping is super hyperbolic is that it makes the tax cuts for the wealthy permanent. It's not just for the wealthy, it's tax cuts for the entire country. It's just like as a percentage of everything, wealthy people will save more money. What is this Jacob guy? Fuck, hold on. What got deleted? What thread? It was about Pisco and Josiah. Oh, I don't know. It's not permanent though, right? Like it could be undone by the next admin. Well, I mean, it's permanent as in it's not expiring. So it could be undone by changing it, but it would have to be another thing you'd fight on. Oh, okay.
To be promoting this app where you can tell people where ICE agents are. Given the recent rise,
An app that tells people where ICE agents are?
Yes.
Maybe the White House should release an app that tells everybody where the home addresses of the CNN employees are.
Was this for giving addresses of the ICE agents or just where they currently are?
Given the rise,
public knowledge, right?
500% increase in assaults on ICE agents, I wanted to see if you could comment on that and why CNN would be promoting such an app.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very good question. I'll have to go back and watch the clip myself, but surely it sounds
That's what I say.
like...
Can you not see links here? I've sent it many times. No, I don't think you can link in YouTube chat.
This would be an incitement
Sure, why
of
not?
further violence against
Weird
our ICE
statement, bro. No, it's not. The point that I'm making with that statement is that this is something that when it's applied to individual people, everybody acts like, oh my God, this is terrible.
So a lot of you guys might not know this because I know Asmongold doesn't get out too much, and I don't know about you guys. There's actually an app that will tell you on your phone where police officers are. I think it comes bundled with a lot of Androids. It's called Google Maps. There's another one called Waze. Doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, but...
But whenever they apply it to government employees in order to help people evade arrest or to endanger the lives of police officers or the people that are in the surrounding area where the enforcement is taking place, it's somehow okay. And the reason why I use personal examples is because personal examples resonate with people in a way that abstractions like this don't. That's the reason why. It's because it works.
As you know, as you stated, there's been a,
it's a double standard.
500% increase in violence against ICE agents, law enforcement officers across the country who are just simply...
Okay, I'm good. What the fuck is this? Wait, how old is this VOD from?
Having a Trump rally just because they support Trump. I'm like, 50% of the country supports Trump, you know? Like, to me, that's a crazy position to hold. Alive on a Trump rally just because they support Trump. I'm like, 50% of the country supports Trump, you know? Like, to me, that's a crazy position to hold. But I don't know. It's like you're cool with like 50% of the country just being gunned down just because they like Trump. Not even like, I don't even think like everyone that likes Trump is like...
Way it came down to his argument wasn't just if you're a passive Trump supporter, if you're going to rallies, that you're showing active support to Trump, then you're a fair target. But at that point, you are basically just saying like, what, then like Twitter posts okay, like you go and hunt someone down for a pro-Trump Twitter post, like what are we saying at this point?
Everything breaks down if you're going to let people target each other for political speech.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like if alive on a Trump rally just because they support Trump, I'm like, 50% of the country...
Okay. Based. Dude, ContraPoints has been in the trenches on Twitter. What is a claim? Because you started making a claim about this app and then started talking about the left. So just trying to understand the convo. Look at the thread you're responding to. I said an example of blatant anti-Semitism. A bunch of leftists jumped in to say that, no, that's not anti-Semitism. There is no leftist anti-Semitism. I don't see this as just a negligible fringe issue. I don't see people saying that leftist anti-Semitism doesn't exist, but if you say 50% of this app is Jew hate, then point to a communist creator, of course people will ask you to clarify. It seems like you're conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. Zionism is a Nazi ideology. What? Or I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm saying what. That's just, I guess that is like the new talking point. You're the one making this confusing, or making this conflation. If anti-Zionism sometimes means opposition to genocide in Gaza, and other times means the Zios killed JFK because he was the only president they couldn't control, maybe Hitler had a point, I think that will have bad consequences. Nowhere here did I or anyone replying to this thread that I've seen say the second thing. Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. I think when your content is being used by a Zionist like Klein, you might want to consider that your message could have been communicated with more nuance. Jesus. Oh my God, this guy, dude, must have a permanently enlarged asshole of Donald Trump's cock.
I just want everyone to know that there's official Alligator Alcatraz merch. There it is, provided to us by the state of Florida. Incredible. And yeah, would you rock this drip? Look at that.
Somebody linked this and said literally MAGA.
There are gonna be two guys sitting on a rock, and they're gonna be looking out at the cityscape of Los Angeles or Miami. It's gonna be all ruins. And they're gonna say, damn, we used to have an amazing civilization. I read about it in some of these books that's left over. It's like, for real? It's like, yeah, man, things were great. We had all kinds of stuff. We had people bring you food to your house whenever you want it. We had like, you go to a place, tip somebody, they dance for you. You have a great time. And he's going, what happened to it? What ended this great civilization? The guy's gonna look up in the sky, he's gonna go, dick rod. We just couldn't get off a nigga's dick. We just hopped on everybody's dick, lost all of our objectivity, lost all of our critical thinking skills, and we just went with what was popular and what the next nigga said. And we rode dick into oblivion. I'm trying to stop that. Stop dick riding.
It's okay.
Stop it. Stop. There are gonna be two guys sitting on a rock.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Bronx. This is where AOC says she's from.
Wait, what is this?
Yo.
What is that thumbnail? What the fuck? Okay.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Bronx. This is where AOC says she's from. And this is where AOC is actually from. Welcome to Yorktown, the business hamlet of Yorktown Heights. There's mansions everywhere. It's beautiful, it's green, it's pristine, it's clean. And they even have a Christopher Columbus Society. I thought AOC got all those statues ripped down. Some structural racism right here in AOC's hometown. Today we're gonna investigate the biggest lie in all of politics, the fraud of AOC. Let's go.
Ocasio. Wow, what a revelation. It's almost like I told you that story myself on national television 7 years ago.
Health insurance.
Wow. Good job, Benny.
No, I just got it in my head at some point.
Wait, what is this?
Driverless cars in an urban setting don't work.
Wait. There's one in here. Hold on. Driverless cars in an urban setting. Hold on to that thought.
Driverless cars in an urban setting don't work because they work too well, right? So what we went to Phoenix where they had Waymo, and I had my producer get in the Waymo, and I ran alongside the Waymo, and I would cut the Waymo off, and the Waymo, of course, because it's got like 58 sensors, would stop instantly, right? And then I would run circles around the Waymo, and the Waymo would sit there patiently waiting for me to get out of the way. And I realized if every car on the road is a driverless car, then there is no penalty whatsoever to pedestrians misbehaving. If you're a kid, why don't 11-year-old boys play soccer on the streets on 42nd Street in Manhattan? Because they're going to get hit by a car and killed. But if every car is a Waymo, you will totally... They're all going to stop and they're going to wait there for hours until you finish their game. The Waymo is, so the whole point of deterrence, the reason deterrence with human drivers work is that the driver will make a mistake and kill you inadvertently. Waymo will not make a mistake. People are always saying the problem with driverless cars is they'll make mistakes. No. They don't make mistakes, and that's the problem.
Is he memeing? Okay. %90 meme? Okay. What is this?
State of New York. How do you mispronounce Kathy? I don't know. I just got it in my head at some point. Look, there's a point to all of this, okay? Mamdani is the future. He is the light, okay? He is the Lord our Savior. He would probably disagree with that, but I say it, all right? I believe it, as a Reddit atheist. The Democrats have absolutely no plan, no path forward. They have nothing. They have no ideas, okay? Nothing. Their only hope is to piggyback on this energy, and right now they're it up. They're it up because of their infinite undying fealty to Israel and to capitalism. They will not budge in either of these positions, but they need to be forced to. That's it. Just overwhelming pressure. Your enemy is the Democratic Party, not the Republicans, okay? Because the Republicans can't be fought until we take over the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, as it exists right now, is completely incapable of and unwilling to do anything about the Republicans, and lefties on their own have no power whatsoever against any of the national legislative agenda items that Republicans are fielding. You know, they have none. They have none. We have no ability to change what Trump is doing at all. I'm not saying you shouldn't shit talk Republicans. Please do so forever, all the time. It's not about not criticizing them. But when it comes to fighting over the future of the country, the soul of the country, you're not doing that shit without some kind of like real political power base. And Mamdani needs all the help he can get, okay? Is Israel our enemy? Israel is the enemy of all life on Earth, and I'm not even slightly exaggerating. It is a nuclear-armed, psychotic, rogue ethno-state currently committing a genocide with the support of the most powerful country on Earth. Do you think behind the scenes Dems are having discussions about supporting Mamdani, or are they just having CPAP parties and talking about their 1930s childhoods? I think that there are a lot of Democrats who see the smoke on the horizon. They see what the future holds, and many of them are terrified because they have operated in a political...
Do you see what I mean? This actually is a really good extension to the thing that I said last week, where I was like, be careful for the socialists and the commies that show up and they start spamming that vote blue no matter who. That's what you guys said, right? They'll use that against you. You should vote for Mamdani in the general, because we would support a left candidate over, especially a fucking MAGA one. But when these guys are screeching that at you, they're doing it facetiously, because they would never vote for Cuomo or the establishment candidate in an election. But then to piggyback on that, he's even more open with like, we need to take over the Democratic Party. And it's like, dog, most of the people don't give a fuck about your shit. They don't like socialism. They don't like this weird shit. This is going to be the whitest, youngest, like most mono-represented party in the history of the United States. Like, it wouldn't even survive, obviously, right? There's a reason why their candidates basically lose everywhere. This is the first guy they find. That's why they're all so fucking excited. This is like the first fucking candidate they've got. They all want to kind of like rally behind.
Framework for decades that has been built off of a consensus lie and consensus biases. They have allowed themselves to be puppets.
Who do you vote for then? Adams? You never vote for Adams. You vote for Mamdani. You don't want to touch Adams with a 50-foot fucking pole.
Controlled by others, by capital, by Zionists, but I overstate, or what is it? I repeat myself. Yes. Of course, because the Zionist lobby is overwhelmingly just like capital with a mask on. I think that'll...
Son of Jesus. Israel, the breaker of brains.
Thinks that they are like above this and like this is some kind of like fucking high-minded ideal, but the moment that they're actually confronted with any sort of real threat, they will immediately default, like go back to factory reset settings and want a person like Bukele or like Trump who will just simply bomb the shit out of them or send the military in and kill anybody who disagrees. That's the reason. Like, you think this won't happen, it'll happen instantly. Duarte is the best example. Duarte literally just executed and just massacred drug dealers. Just indiscriminately. Just killed tons of them. And everybody was happy. How does that happen? It's simple. People feel like their survival is at stake. That's the reason. He got arrested? Yeah, he got arrested by a third party, not by his own government or by his own people. What the fuck are you saying? Hitler also won office? Yeah, I mean, obviously Hitler's another good example of that too. Yeah, for sure. People will easily and always vote for somebody who is like violent and aggressive if they think it's something that's going to achieve a goal. Give me 1 second. Gotta take a call. And he's good? Yeah.
Man, we really are doing online politics, huh? I'm scared of Mamdani fucking our party by framing Democrats as socialists. Should I be scared? Or am I just retarded? Republicans are trying to frame us as socialists literally forever. I mean, like, let him do his mayor thing if he wins in general, and then just go from there. Reverse Robin Hood and Trumpian totalitarianism. Trump's big beautiful bill is a sadistic monstrosity, from Paul Krugman. Okay, go. Why won't he go over there? Go to the thing. I bought a thing for you to go fly into. Go over there and fly into it. House Republicans have passed Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act. After having spent decades covering Republican domestic policies, I have a pretty jaundiced view of their intentions. But this bill... Hold on. This guy. I think I got him. I'm pretty sure I got him. Fuck you. If you were Jewish, would you still vote for the guy who praises Hamas and started SJP and wants to globalize the Intifada over atoms? Yep. Easily. If I was an American Jew, yeah. House Republicans have passed Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill after having spent decades covering Republican domestic policy. Policies, I have a pretty jaundiced view of their intentions, but this bill is so cruelly regressive that it shocked even me. This bill is truly unprecedented in the extent to which it takes away from the have-nots and gives to the ultra-haves. It slashes Medicaid, taking health care away from millions. It slashes food stamps, ensuring that many will go hungry. At the same time, it gives huge tax cuts to the wealthy. Those of us who followed the legislation knew that it would be highly regressive. New estimates from the Congressional Budget Office, a nonpartisan agency of economic technocrats, confirm in detail just how bad the OBBBA is. Just making sure. This is a government agency.gov. Yes. Yep, it is. Okay. CBO's numbers, released yesterday, are startling. Here's the percentage change in households' purchasing power by decile of the income distribution caused by the ABBBBA. Average annual change in household resources as a percentage of current law income after transfers and taxes. Federal taxes and cash transfers, federal and state in-kind transfers, states' fiscal responses, other spending and revenues, and net effect. Hell yes. That's what the fuck I want to see. Can you explain that graph like I'm a retard? I am one. Well, this is just estimating the average change in how many resources you will have as a household as a percentage of current law income. So this is saying compared to what all the laws in the books are right now, if we change the law, how is that going to impact your income compared to the last law? And it is saying that, like, for the lowest decile of homes, the bottom 10%, you're probably going to be negative 4% all of your income. For the second lowest, you'll be probably about negative 1.2%. But if you're the highest, you're up 2%, 2.2%. We call that a big W. W's in chat. Where are my 20%ers at? Fuck the poor. That 4% income decline for the poorest 10% of Americans is the scale of economic damage you'd expect from a severe recession. But here it is being deliberately inflicted on the poorest Americans. In the ABBBBA, pain in the least well-off Americans is not a price that is being paid in order to reduce the U.S. budget deficit. Remember, the benefit cuts for those in the bottom decile of the income distribution are being paired with tax cuts at the top of the income distribution, so the net effect will be a large increase in the U.S. budget deficit and a bigger deficit as well, just to send me money. Wait, it gets worse. The CBO's analysis doesn't consider the effect of the Trump tariffs on household incomes. This is important because tariffs are taxes, regressive taxes, that fall more heavily on lower income than higher income families. I'll be writing about the distributional impact of tariffs in the future, but for now, here's the Yale Budget Lab's estimate of the combined effect of the OBBBA and Trump tariffs on U.S. household incomes. Wait. Okay, sorry. I thought I was going to sneeze. Wait. No, okay. Combined effects of the House-passed OBBBA and tariffs. Negative 6% for the bottom decile. only up negative 1.4% for the top. We're still doing okay, guys. Is the OBBBA just a budget thing, so only requires 50 plus 1 votes in the Senate to pass? It's already passed the Senate, yeah. It only requires half the House plus 1 or whatever, right? What this graph shows is that the tariffs magnify the regressive effects of the OBBA. The poorest households are made even worse off. The loss inflicted on the bottom 10% of the income distribution goes from 4% of their income to 6.5%. Overall, the bottom 80% of households suffer a loss of income from the combined effects of the tariffs and the OBBA. Only the top 10% are clearly better off from a bill that increases the budget deficit. That's quite a trick. Republicans have already denounced the CBO's estimates as fake. Arithmetic has a well-known liberal bias. They claim, as they always do, that tax cuts for the rich will supercharge economic growth. A claim that has been tested to destruction, and I do mean destruction, over and over again at both the federal and state levels. It has never yet been vindicated. This time, though, guys, the wealth will trickle down. I'm ready to trickle it, okay? I'm ready to trickle it, okay? I'm going to do $100 giveaways for a week. The fact is that there's no reasonable way to dispute the basic conclusion of the CBO's analysis. The Big Beautiful Bill is an immense exercise in reverse Robin Hoodism, taking resources away from those who need them and giving the money to the already rich while driving up the deficit, increasing interest rates, and crowding out investment. The OBBBA is, in fact, so terrible that we need to ask how any party in a democracy imagines that it could get away with taking money away from 80% of the American public. The answer is that the GOP's vicious tax and spending plans can't be separated from the party's contempt for democracy. The House has just enacted legislation that is desperately unpopular and would be even less popular if the public understood it fully. Why then did House members vote for it? Because they fear Donald Trump more than they fear the voters, or because they don't believe we will ever have fair elections again, or both. Also, what's with the bill's peculiar name? And yes, it is officially the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. While it might seem odd to focus on its incredibly fucking retarded name, there is a real important link between a certain kind of vulgar tackiness and authoritarian rule. Milan Kundera, author of The Unbearable Lightness of Being, called it totalitarian kitsch. By giving their bill a ludicrous name, because those were Trump's words, GOP politicians were engaging in performative self-abasement, demonstrating their willingness to humiliate themselves in order to curry favor with the leader. So by calling the legislation the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, Republicans were in effect confirming that, yes, Washington has turned into Pyongyang on the Potomac. Wait, am I pronouncing this correctly? Where political survival depends on slavish flattery of the dictator. I don't remember how you pronounce this. The Potomac?
$1 across the Potomac, however.
Potomac? Shut up. USA.
Washington, D.C., the U.S. capital, is a compact city on the Potomac River.
Potomac. The Potomac River. Musical coda. Would increase the deficit? What? No way! But look, in 2025, it might go down a little bit. No? Senate bill adds $4 trillion to debt as written, $5.5 trillion if permanent. Man. Well, this is all fake news, of course. True. What is this? Hottest take, stupid Americans are the new Irish Americans. Trump is their JFK. A while back, I asked my 79-year-old uncle what it was like on the day that man landed on the moon. Real talk, the most terrifying non-Donald Trump-related thing that's happened to me in the last few years is a mild but persistent case of age-related family history curiosity. My uncle asked me what year that was. 1969, I said. He remembered 1969. That was the year he was chasing Jewish girls at City College and driving a Buttercup Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah, he said, the moon landing, that was something. My uncle's parents, my grandparents, were both Irish immigrants. The universe of my uncle's childhood was a neighborhood full of Irish immigrants in the Bronx, where the Irish bars were across the street from St. John's Church. Around the block, Hibernian clubs, and down Broadway from Gaelic Park, where in the few seconds they had between cigarettes, guys with names like Lefty Divine called games of Irish stickball on screechy, staticky microphones. So I asked my uncle, well, what was it like when John F. Kennedy was elected? And through his eyes, I could almost see his brain get into a DeLorean and crackle back to mid-November 1960. He beamed. Oh, it was the best, my uncle said, shaking his head. We were on top of the world. The whole neighborhood was. What we were was the best thing you could be. Everyone knew that we were going to heaven, and everyone else, author's note, Protestants, were going to hell. It was amazing. So to summarize, the crowning scientific and technological achievement of 300,000 years of human evolution that allowed mankind to step off the planet and towards the stars, a solid B. A guy who kind of reminded you of yourself, making it to the top of the social and political hill, that was everything. I don't mean to pick on my uncle. This is how people are. It's how many of them are today. Except today, the new ethnicity is not Irish or Bengali or Venezuelan. It's stupid. Stupid Americans are the new Irish Americans, and Donald Trump is their JFK. From the Paleolithic age up to the very, very recent past, stupidity was an act. You put your pants on backwards and then lost your car keys because you thought you put them in your back pocket, but your back pocket was actually on the front. A little stupid happened to everybody. If stupid happened to you regularly, then you had a condition. Being congenitally stupid, as a good number of people were, you tried to keep it out of view as best you could, like a rash you couldn't clear up. Which is kind of how being gay was seen back then. A weird and shameful quirk that no one could quite explain and a few people wanted to own. But gay became an ethnicity too. Back when my uncle was working at a Gaelic Park after school, there were millions of young men his age who would have loved to share the backseat of a convertible with John Kennedy, maybe a Sunday afternoon drive in Hyannisport, probably not Dallas. But approximately 0 of them would have admitted it, until all that changed. A few people who'd been told to keep their homosexuality to themselves just didn't. The lock was picked, the closet door sprang open, and people who had a powerful shared experience but didn't realize they shared it suddenly did. Individual homosexuals became the gay community, and pretty quickly after that, an ethnicity. Yes, gay is an ethnicity. They have a flag, they have parades, they have clubs and bars and civic organizations and scholarships and even some neighborhoods. They have heroes and group mythologies. They recognize other gay people even before they've met. Sure, it's not a typical ethnicity. They don't have their own language, but there's definitely slang. Or an old gay country, though they do have Provincetown, and it's lovely this time of year. And I was going to say they don't have a cuisine of their own, but I don't know what else you'd call brunch. And that same process is happening now with stupid people. They're transcending their individual limitations, finding each other, and becoming out and proud stupid Americans. Because stupid is a pretty strong term, I should probably take a minute here to describe what I mean. It's not really a matter of raw IQ, and educational achievement only partially captures it. Stupid people are those who don't understand what is happening around them and have no interest in actually finding out. Active ignorance should be another way of putting it, but stupid just sounds better. Despite being very well informed about electrons and such, a competent chemical engineer with a master's degree could be very stupid indeed if he or she still believes that trickle-down economics is a real thing. How individual stupid Americans are becoming the collective, self-aware group of stupid Americans is a great idea for a lot of very fancy journalism, I'm sure. It's probably got something to do with the internet, where stupid people can find and repeat stupid things to each other over and over and over again. But whatever the processes are, they're surely processing. The main thing that makes this development less obvious than it would otherwise be is that while Irish people use the word Irish about themselves and gay people use gay, stupid people don't, for reasons of basic self-esteem, describe themselves as stupid. Instead, they call themselves things like real Americans, patriots, and independent thinkers to connect and explain facts that they've known about themselves their whole lives, like how much of what socially recognized smart people seem to say feels boring, confusing, and annoying, and how people's faces change expression when they, the stupid, try to share their own opinions on things. Lately, stupid people have been redefining themselves, attributing the shame and inadequacy they feel in these moments to the corruption, blindness, and arrogance of sources and voices that they don't understand. They do this because they are stupid. But still, you got to feel for them. You know how unpleasant it is to feel like you don't understand what everyone else is talking about, to have things explained to you twice, to feel like your opinions don't matter, and that you've been written off, and knowing that it's not far to imagine what a light in the darkness it must seem when someone who is just like you comes in and changes everything. If written language survives the next 6 weeks, we'll be writing about Donald Trump for 1,000 years. But whatever else there is to say, the most important thing about Donald Trump, the thing that is obvious from watching him speak for just 14 seconds, is that he's profoundly stupid. Whatever it is that he might be talking about or doing at any given moment, it's clear that while he has a reptilian instinct for reading and stoking conflict, he has no real idea what's going on, and he doesn't really care to. Stupid is what he is and where he comes from. It is his mind and soul. Catholic was what JFK was. Gay was what Harvey Milk was. Stupid is who Donald Trump is. And that's what they love most, the stupid American voters. Remember that sentence you heard at the beginning of all this in 2016? He's just saying what everybody is thinking. But see, not everybody was thinking that Hillary Clinton was an alien, that global warming was a Chinese hoax, and that what America needed most of all was a plywood wall stretching from Texas to California. Only the stupid people were. And suddenly, in an instant, the most powerful man on earth was thinking just like them. With his clueless smirk and unstoppable rise, he turned people whose stupidity made them feel like nobody into people who felt like everybody. That's why he'll never lose him, because it was never about. He'll never lose them, because it was never about what he did or didn't do. All that stuff is very confusing, and the stupid American community isn't interested in the details. They love him for who he is, which is one of them, and because he shows them every day that stupid Americans can reach the social mountaintop. There's this story we tell ourselves over and over and over again in this country. A new group of immigrants arrive or emerges and everyone else dumps on them. They face discrimination and miserable conditions, but they persevere. They work hard, they organize, they assimilate to America, and America assimilates to them. They grow, they contribute, they become proud of their new hyphenated selves, and then one day they break that last barrier. This is a story we can tell without words. This is a story we feel. This story is who we are. It's in there so deep that you almost find yourself rooting for stupid Americans. But then you look at your phone and you see a guy with an active brainworm has just banned vaccines. The head of FEMA didn't know that hurricane season was a thing. And we just started another war in the Middle East because an elderly man thought Israeli missiles looked wicked cool on TV, and somehow life just keeps going on. Wow, cute. There we go. I don't know how much fact checking I'll have to do if I watch this. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, I see what the author's getting at. There's like elements of truth to this, right? Sure. It's an interesting analysis. It's a funny article. I think this guy, somebody in chat said, is this the guy who did the autism thing? Andrew Jeremy Wakefield is a British fraudster, anti-vaccine activist, and disgraced former physician. He was struck off the medical register for serious professional misconduct due to his involvement in the fraudulent 1998 Lancet MMR autism study that falsely claimed a link between the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and autism. The publicity... Stephen, do you have any opinion relevant to this discussion on modern monetary theory and the idea that sovereign debt, particularly the U.S., is a fiction? Doesn't matter. Nope, don't care to engage with it. Don't give a fuck about MMT. Somebody said, donated $20 and said, quote, basically, incompetent people got fed up by competent people telling them they were wrong, made a more welcoming alternative ecosystem of competency cosplayers, and then somehow turned the whole government over to them. True. What? Okay. The publicity surrounding the study caused a sharp decline in vaccination uptake, leading to a number of outbreaks of measles around the world and many deaths thereafter, or therefrom. He was a surgeon on the liver transplant program at the Royal Free Hospital in London. He became a senior lecturer and honorary consultant in experimental gastro and enterology at the Royal Free and University College School of Medicine. He resigned from his positions there in 2001 by mutual agreement and then moved to the United States in 2004. Wakefield co-founded and began working at the Thoughtful House Research Center, later renamed the Johnson Center for Child Health and Development in Austin, Texas. He served as executive director of the center until February 2010, when he resigned in the wake of findings against him by the British General Medical Council. Kind of confused. How does Rob Norris, someone who works with children, support a bill that cuts funding for his own job and limits kids' access to transportation? People are just very good at compartmentalizing everything, I think. I haven't actually done a deep dive into this, the whole MMR autism study, the big one, the big guy. February 1998. A fraudulent research paper by physician Andrew Wakefield and 12 co-authors titled Ileal Lymphoid Nodular Hyperplasia, Nonspecific Colitis, and Pervasive Developmental Disorder in Children was published in the British Medical Journal, The Lancet. The paper falsely claimed causative links between the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and colitis, and between colitis and autism. The fraud involved data selection, data manipulation, and 2 undisclosed conflicts of interest. It was exposed in a lengthy Sunday Times investigation by reporter Brian Deere, resulting in the paper's retraction in February of 2010. Damn. And a British newspaper that did the fact-checking on a Lancet-published study. Okay. I didn't know that's where the big expose came from. Wakefield reportedly stood to earn up to US $43 million per year selling diagnostic kits for a non-existent syndrome he claimed to have discovered. He also held a patent to a rival vaccine at the time, and he had been employed by a lawyer representing parents in lawsuits against vaccine producers. The scientific consensus on vaccine is that there's no causal connection between MMR and any other vaccine. This paper reported on 12 children with developmental disorders referred to the hospital and described a constellation of bowel symptoms as well as endoscopy and biopsy, endoscopy, endoscopy. Wow, what's up, Logup? Thanks for tier 5 subbing. And wow, Corrosive, welcome to the tier 2 Super Clubber. Thanks.
The endoscopist is able to put a tiny probe inside the bile duct and
that's how we could diagnose GERD based on an endoscopy.
Is there a reason why you chose the pill endoscopy versus
that were said to be an evidence of a new syndrome that Wakefield would later call autistic enterocolitis. The paper described MMR vaccination as the apparent precipitating event, tabulated the parents of 8 of the 12 children as linking their developmental symptoms with MMR vaccination, suggested the connection between autism and the gastrointestinal pathologies were real and called for further research, but it admitted that the research did not prove an association between the MMR vaccine and autism. 12 children. Damn, that's a start. At a press conference accompanying the paper's publication, later criticized as Science by Press conference, Wakefield said that he thought it prudent to use single vaccines instead of the MMR triple vaccine until this could be ruled out as an environmental trigger, based on a paper with 12 patients? Wakefield said, I can't support the continued use of these 3 vaccines, given in combination until this issue has been resolved. In a video news release issued by the hospital to broadcasters in advance of the press conference, he called for MMR vaccines to be suspended in favor of the single vaccines. In a BBC interview, Wakefield's mentor, Roy Pounder, who is not a co-author, admitted the study was controversial. He added, in hindsight, it may be a better solution to give the vaccines or the vaccinations separately. When the vaccinations were given individually, there was no problem. These suggestions were supported neither by Wakefield's co-authors nor any scientific evidence. British television coverage of the press conference was intense, but press interest was mixed. Origin of I don't know if
this assertion in
I don't know. We'll see. Fuck it.
Down with first principles thinking and start off with the origin of the claim. One of the first claims that vaccines might cause autism was made in the book A Shot in the Dark by Harris Coulter and Barbara Lowe Fisher in 1991. At the time, very little attention was paid to this assertion. In 1998, Andrew Wakefield and 12 of his colleagues published a case series in The Lancet suggesting that the MMR vaccine may predispose children to autism. Despite the small sample size of 12 children, the uncontrolled design, the speculative nature of the conclusions, the paper still caused a firestorm in the media, leading to more than 12,000 cases of measles, hundreds of hospitalizations, many with serious complications, and at least 3 deaths. All of this attributed to parents' fears after the publication of Wakefield's infamous paper. Later, it turned out that Wakefield had failed to disclose financial interest. He had been funded by lawyers who had been engaged by parents in lawsuits against the vaccine-producing companies. Wakefield was paid more than £400,000 by lawyers trying to prove that the vaccine was unsafe, and he had not disclosed this conflict of interest.
You did have a lawsuit against manufacturers of the MMR vaccine, didn't you? I mean, didn't you have a financial conflict of interest?
If I could just answer, Anderson, the paper that was published in The Lancet received not 1 cent of funding from lawyers or litigants.
Sir, did you not have a financial interest, though? Did you disclose that you were being paid by a law firm?
I disclosed in the relevant paper that I was an expert in MMR vaccine litigation, yes.
You didn't disclose you were being paid, though, for a possible lawsuit against the vaccine makers, that you were developing a patent for an alternate vaccine.
The purpose of this paper was nothing to do with the litigation.
In February 2010, The Lancet completely retracted the paper. He was found guilty of deliberate fraud. In May of 2010, he was struck off the United Kingdom Medical Register, losing his license. Journalist Brian Deere unearthed clear evidence of falsification in Wakefield's paper.
Dr. Wakefield, I'm sorry to interrupt. Brian Deere, Channel 4 Television. Could I talk to you about your research, sir, and your commercial ambitions?
To be clear, when you're doing scientific research, it's okay to have a conflict of interest, but it's disclosed at the bottom of the paper. If you read any, can I just get like a random fucking paper? I should just be on Google Scholar. I'm fucking retarded. Whatever. Usually at the bottom of the paper, when you read, when it's giving the credits to the authors, it'll say like, here's the declared conflicts of interest or whatever. Like, it doesn't automatically mean a study is bad. Like, you can go through the study methodology and everything else, but like, if you don't disclose it, that's very bad. You have to disclose it.
He found that not one of the 12 cases reported in the Lancet paper was free of misrepresentation or undisclosed alteration, and that no single case could the medical records be fully reconciled with the descriptions, the diagnosis, or the histories published in the journal.
My recommendation was that children continue to be vaccinated, and I suggested the option of the single vaccine.
Even more shocking, Brian Deere's investigation revealed that in June 1997, Wakefield had filed a patent for a supposedly safer single measles vaccine, giving him motive to discredit the MMR vaccine, which he blamed for autism. Wakefield was given multiple opportunities to replicate the paper's findings or to say he was mistaken. He declined to do both. Wakefield was also held guilty of ethical violations. He had conducted invasive investigations on the children without obtaining the necessary ethical clearances. He had subjected the children to unpleasant procedures, including lumbar punctures and colonoscopies they did not need. He also took blood samples from several children in the study while at his son's birthday party without ethical permission. So what is RFK Jr.? Blood samples from several children in the study while at his son's birthday party without ethical permission. So what does RFK Jr. think of Andrew Wakefield, author of one of the most damaging medical hoaxes of the last 100 years, named in Time magazine in a list of great science frauds, a man responsible for causing panic in the UK and all over the world, responsible for children's preventable illnesses, hospitalizations, even deaths. What does RFK think of this man?
In any just society, we would be building statues to Andy Wakefield.
Fuck it. Let's go. Why not?
I started getting calls from parents saying, my child...
Wait! Was that B-roll or was that an AI video? Am I crazy? Is it just
I started getting calls from parents saying my child...
I don't know.
Child was perfectly normal. They stopped sleeping at night, they were screaming, they were in pain. The lights went out in their eyes was a very common description. Doctors say, this is just part of autism. Get over it, put your child in a home, have another child and forget about it.
What were... Put your child in a home? Because they have autism?
They think. This is their quote, we are not going to be left with an orphan drug. And so it was decided to avoid that, they would put it into one-day-old infants.
Do vaccines cause autism? When I was a boy, it was the left that was skeptical of vaccines, thought that there might be a link between vaccines and autism. It was the left-wing shows that promoted this idea. Now, politics has flipped upside down. It's people on the right who suspect that vaccines might cause autism or other adverse health effects. It's the people on the left who are defending Big Pharma. You've now got Bobby Kennedy, who was a Democrat. He's a Kennedy, for goodness sake.
Democrat, big Pharma, Democrat.
He's now the Secretary of Health and Human Services for Donald Trump, who previously had been kind of a Democrat. Now he's the Republican president. And here I am, still totally ignorant of vaccines. So I figured I'd call in a man who is at the center of this controversy, and that is Dr. Andy Wakefield. Dr. Wakefield, thank you for coming on the show.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
For the people who don't know who you are, you published the study in the 1990s that suggested adverse health effects from the MMR vaccine. And you have also been...
Well, it sounds like it didn't just suggest it. It sounds like it said there was a causal link. If this paper is probably pretty short, right? Like 20 or 30 pages? You think if it's 12 patients? I'm curious, how long is this? Let me... Is it Sci-Hub? I don't know why I just fucking looked that up. But imagine if it worked. Imagine if I could just paste the title and it would... Oh my god. Wait, is this it? This is a couple pages of it. This can't be the whole thing. 5 pages? You wouldn't even get a... Okay. Fuck it. Let's read it. I put this under. This is like a pop science thing, biology. Fuck, I'll just throw it in here for now. Background. We investigated a consecutive series of children with chronic enterocolitis and regressive developmental disorder. Enterocolitis is an inflammation that occurs throughout your intestines. It combines enteritis, inflammation of the small intestine, with colitis, inflammation of the large intestine.
Ago today, I was born with a disease called necrotizing enterocolitis.
Enterocolitis?
It's a wicked disease. It eats you out.
How do we say this?
Necrotizing enterocolitis and premature
diarrhea. Very specific conditions known as necrotizing enterocolitis.
Enterocolitis. Enterocolitis. Okay. Not enterocolitis. 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 And regressive developmental disorder. Developmental regression describes a child losing their ability to use previously established skills. Okay. Background. Ooh. How do you link? Wait. Original. There we go. Vaccines cause autism. Paper. Methods. 12 children, mean age 6 years, ranges from 3 to 10, and 11 boys. Okay. Okay. Were referred to a pediatric gastroenterology unit with a history of normal development followed by loss of acquired skills, including language, together with diarrhea and abdominal pain. Children underwent gastroenterological, neurological, and developmental assessment and review of developmental records, ileocolonoscopy and biopsy sampling, magnetic resonance imaging, and electroencephalography in EEG, and lumbar puncture were done under sedation. Barium follow-through radiography was done where possible. Biochemical, hematological, and immunological profiles were examined. What is the ileo part? Is that like how high up does that go? A procedure that combines a colonoscopy and ileoscopy to visualize colon, rectum, and terminal ileum, the end of the small intestine. Okay, so a big thing going all the way up your intestines, and then biopsy sampling is when you cut a piece off to look at it under a microscope. mRNA. Is MRI, that's the one where they inject you with the ferrous material and they see you glow under a thing or whatever, right? These strong magnetic fields, magnetic field gradients, and radio waves form images and images on bulb X-rays. These finite CT and PET scans. Oh no, this doesn't require injections. Okay. This is the big machine. Did I just close the paper? I hope I did. Paste. An EEG, that's just the thing that you put on your head with electrodes to measure brain waves, right? Is a method to record an electrogram of the spontaneous electrical activity of the brain. The biosignals detected by EEG have been shown to represent the postsynaptic potentials of pyramidal neurons in the neocortex and holocortex. Okay. And then lumbar puncture is when you stick a big needle into somebody's back, lower back to sample, I think, cerebral spinal fluid. Barium follow-through radiography was done where possible. A barium follow-through X-ray, also known as a small bowel follow-through, is a procedure used to examine the small intestine using X-rays and a contrast agent called Barium. Fluoroscopy and barium-based contrast here. Okay. Biochemical, hematological, and immunological profiles were examined. Hematological, is that just where you take like a sample and you measure like all the different levels of stuff in the blood? Purple top tube anticoagulated blood is the only type of anticoagulant that could be assayed. Sorry. Okay. All right. Jesus. Methods. Okay. Findings. Onset of behavioral symptoms were associated by the parents with the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination in 8 of the 12 children with measles I can't read this. Hold on. Is it retracted on every page? Based. Fuck my ability to read this out. Oh wait, this is even uglier. Is there an easy way to get rid of the retracted thing or no? And rubella vaccinations in 8 of the 12 children with measles infections in 1 child and otitis media in another. Middle ear infection. Okay. All 12 children had intestinal abnormalities ranging from lymphoid nodular hyperplasia, nodular lymphoid hyperplasia of the gastrointestinal tract is characterized by the presence of multiple small nodules, normally between 2 and 10 millimeter in diameter, distributed along the small intestine more often, and then stomach, large intestine, or rectum. The pathogenesis is largely unknown. It can occur in all age groups, primarily in children, can affect adults with or without immunodeficiency. Some patients associated disease, namely common variable. Okay, nodule things. I don't know what this says. Aftoid ulcers is a strong indication and the earliest radiographic sign of Crohn's colitis. Okay. Histology. I don't know any of these fucking words. Study the microscope and any of biological tissues. Okay. Showed patchy chronic inflammation. I can't read this. That's easier to read. Oh, thank you. Histology showed patchy chronic inflammation in the colon in 11 children and reactive ileal lymphoid hyperplasia in 7, but no granulomas. Wait, this isn't what we're... No. Holy fucking AIDS. Okay, hold on. What does hyperplasia mean? Hyperplasia. Jesus Christ, we don't need the child porn, thank you. Or hypergenesis is an enlargement of an organ or tissue caused by an increase in the amount of organic tissue that results from cell proliferation. Okay. It's the process by which a cell grows and divides to produce 2 daughter cells. Cell revolution leads to an exponential increase. Okay. Lymphoid hyperplasia. Okay. Reactive, and then ileal refers to what? Refers to the ileum. Okay. These are the names of the intention. Okay. And then what does reactive mean? Unredacted version. I don't need it. Thank you, though. Someone says it just means growth from inflammation. Immune system reactive. Okay. Reactive hyperplasia in 7, but no granulomas. Is a granuloma named for a cancerous growth? I don't remember. Hold on. Is an area of tightly clustered immune cells or inflammation in your body. They form around an infection or foreign objects in your body. They can form almost anywhere, but they're most often found in your lungs. Granulomas can be a symptom of a chronic addiction or an infection. Okay. Okay, so... Okay. Behavioral disorders included autism in 9, disintegrative psychosis 1, and possible post-viral or vaccinal encephalitis or 2. What is this one? Childhood disintegrative disorder, also known as Heller syndrome, and disintegrative psychosis. Hold on. Not sure if this is hard to read because Dustin is in the background or the author is actually a schizo. All of these words so far have just been normal medical words. I have no medical background. I just want to, we'll read it one time so that it'll help me for the future.
We had childhood disintegrative disorder.
Disintegrative.
And we had pervasive
Asperger's, childhood disintegrative disorder,
or a disintegrative force.
The fuck? Okay, this is characterized by late onset of developmental delays. Okay. And possible post-viral or vaccinal encephalitis. Okay. Inflammation of the brain, it can be caused by viral or bacterial infections or by immune cells mistakenly taking the brain. Okay. 2 of them. Okay. Vaccinal, does that mean caused by a vaccine? Related to vaccine. Okay. There were no focal neurological abnormalities, and MRI and EEG tests were normal. Abnormal laboratory results were significantly raised. Urinary methylmalonic acid compared with age-matched controls, low hemoglobin in 4 children, and a low serum IgA in 4 children. Okay. Hold on. It's just the intro that'll be hard, okay? This test measures the amount of methylmalonic acid in your blood and urine. MMA is a substance made in small amounts when you digest protein. MMA is needed for metabolism, which is the process your body uses to change food. Okay. Raised compared to age-matched controls. Low hemoglobin in 4 children. Is that the clotting stuff? Hemoglobin? No, that's not. That's what carries our oxygen through the blood. Okay. Protein-containing iron facilitates transportation of oxygen in red blood cells. Okay. Low hemoglobin in 4 children and low serum IgA. It's the level of immunoglobulin A in the blood. A type of antibody. Okay. Okay. Interpretation. We identified associated gastrointestinal disease and developmental regression in a group of previously normal children, which was generally associated in time with possible environmental triggers. Okay, so we got 12 kids who were referred to a child gut unit for like stomach problems and stuff. Okay, a pediatric gastroenterological unit with a history of normal development followed by a loss of acquired skills, including language. Okay, so 12 kids who were all between the ages of 3 and 10 are referred to some unit for kids with stomach problems, and they all kind of turned a little bit retarded, and they also had some stomach problems. They were assessed, their stomachs, their brains, and then their overall development. And they somehow said that this was associated by them getting vaccinated at some age. Okay. If you want more accessible YouTube slop about vaccine/autism. H-bomb. Oh, I'm good. This is all of this is accessible. You just have to be willing to Google shit, okay? Okay. Where are we at? Interpretation. We identified associated gastrointestinal disease and developmental regression in a group of previously normal children, which was generally associated in time with possible environmental triggers. Introduction. We saw several children who, after a period of apparent normality, lost acquired skills, including communication. They all had gastrointestinal symptoms, including abdominal pain, diarrhea, and bloating, and in some cases, food intolerance. We describe the clinical findings and gastrointestinal features of these children. Patients and methods. 12 children consecutively referred to the Department of Pediatric Gastroenterology. 12 children consecutively referred to the Department of Pediatric Gastroenterology with a history of a pervasive developmental disorder, with loss of acquired skills and intestinal symptoms, diarrhea, abdominal pain, bloating, and food intolerance were investigated. All children were admitted to the ward for 1 week, accompanied by their parents. Clinical investigations. We took histories, including details of immunizations and exposure to infectious diseases, and assessed the children. In 11 cases, the history was obtained by the senior clinician. Neurological and psychiatric assessments were done by consultant staff, PHMB, with HMS4 criteria. This is how some medical criteria that you diagnose these things with, I'm guessing. Developmental histories included a review of prospective developmental records from parents, health visitors, and general practitioners. 4 children did not undergo psychiatric assessment in hospital. All had been assessed professionally elsewhere, so these assessments were used as the basis for their behavioral diagnosis. When you say neurological and psychiatric assessments were done by consultant staff, is the assumption there that they are consultant staff for the researchers or for these other hospitals, do you think? For the researchers and cases that I've seen. Okay. Okay, okay. After bowel preparation, ileocolonoscopy, which is a colonoscopy that goes all the way up to the end of the small intestine, right, was performed by SHM or MAT. What does this mean? SHM versus MAT. Imagine if they just told me the answer right now. But medication-assisted treatment, or I think those are people's initials. Oh, these are the people performing the thing. Oh, that might be it. Okay. Okay, so the ileocolonoscopy was performed by SHM or MAT under sedation with midazolam and pethidine. I'm guessing it's like tranquilizers or whatever. Paired, frozen, and formalin-fixed mucosal biopsy samples were taken from the terminal ileum, ascending, transverse, descending, and sigmoid colons, and from the rectum. The procedure was recorded by video or still images and were compared with images of the previous 7 consecutive pediatric colonoscopies, 4 normal colonoscopies, and 3 on children with ulcerative colitis, in which the physician reported normal appearances in the terminal ileum, Barium follow-through radiography was possible in some cases. Also under sedation, cerebral magnetic resonance imaging, electroencephalography, including visual, brainstem, auditory, and sensory evoked potentials, where compliance made these possible, and lumbar puncture were done. Okay, going through all the tests. Okay. Laboratory investigations. Thyroid function, serum long-chain fatty acids, and cerebrospinal fluid lactate were measured to exclude known causes of childhood neurodegenerative disease. Urinary methylmalonic acid. How do I pronounce this one? Hold on.
Urine test, that's the methylmalonic acid test. Homocysteine level and the methylmalonic and is a better evaluation.
Why does it look like a
You
bro?
can also measure methylmalonic acid and homocysteine levels.
Okay. All right. Was measured in random urine samples from 8 of the 12 children and 14 age-matched and sex-matched normal controls by a modification of a technique described previously. Chromatograms were scanned digitally on a computer to analyze the methylmalonic acid-free zones from cases and controls. Urinary methylmalonic acid concentrations in patients and controls were compared by a 2-sample t-test. Urinary creatinine was estimated by routine spectrophotometric assay, I think. Assay? Children were screened for endomysial antibodies, and boys were screened for Fragile X if this had not been done before. Stool samples were cultured for Campylobacter SPP, Salmonella SPP, and Shigella SPP, and assessed by microscopy for ova and parasites. Serum were screened for antibodies by Yersinia enterocolitica, colitica. Histology, and then formalin-fixed biopsy samples of ileum and colon were assessed and reported by a pathologist. 5 ileocolonic biopsy series from age-matched and site-matched controls, whose reports showed histologically normal mucosa were obtained for comparison. All tissues were assessed by 3 other clinical and experimental pathologists. Okay. Ethical approval and consent. Investigations were approved by the Ethical Practice Committee of the Royal Free Hospital NHS Trust, and parents gave informed consent. Results. Clinical details of the children are shown in tables 1 and 2. None had neurological abnormalities on clinical examination. MRI scans, EEGs, and cerebrospinal fluid profiles were normal, and Fragile X was negative. Prospective developmental records showed satisfactory achievement of early milestones in all children. The only girl, child number 8, was noted to be a slow developer compared to her older sister. Okay. She was subsequently found to have coarctation of the aorta. After surgical repair of the aorta at the age of 14 months, she progressed rapidly and learned to talk. Speech was lost later. Child 4 was kept under review for the first year of life because of wide bridging of the nose. He was discharged from follow-up as developmentally normal at age 1 year. Okay. Assay is A-S-S-A-Y. Assay. Okay. Okay, so these are the abnormal lab tests, these are the endoscopic findings, and this is the histological findings. Different ages, and then sexes. Okay. It feels like the labs are kind of like, for the labs, it seems like they're kind of all over the place, no? Let's get an ulcer and rectum. So LNH, what does that mean? LNH of T ileum. Oh, lymph nodular hyperplasia. Hyperplasia. Okay, well, at least that's consistent, I guess. And then histological findings, acute cacal cryptitis. I don't know what that means. I'm not going to look all these up. Fuck this. Clinical details in laboratory, endoscopic and histological findings. LNH equals lymph node, nodular hyperplasia, T ileum equals terminal ileum, normal ranges in units, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Child 1 through 12. Behavioral diagnosis. Autism. Disintegrative disorder. Autism. Post-vaccinal encephalitis. Autism spectrum disorder. Autism. Exposure identified by parents or doctor. MMR vaccine. MMR. Interval from exposure to first behavioral symptom. 1 week, 2 weeks, 48 hours. Measles vaccine at 15 months, followed by slowing in development, dramatic deterioration in behavior immediately after MMR at 4.5 years. Self-injurious behavior started at 18 months, 2 months after the MMR vaccine. 1 week, 24 hours, 2 weeks, 1 week, 24 hours, 1 week, loss of speech development, deterioration, language skills. So they got, when were they diagnosed with autism? During the study or after? So they got autism in 1 week from the vaccine? Jesus. Okay. All right. In 8 children, the onset of behavioral problems had been linked either by the parents or by the child's physician with measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination. Really? That's a really strong statement. I wonder how appropriate or how common that is to see there. Feature associated with exposure, interval from exposure to first behavioral symptom, fever, delirium, self-injury, rash and fever. Fever makes sense. I think typically you get a fever right after you get vaccinated. That's like a pretty common response. Repetitive behavior, self-injury, rash and convulsion, gaze avoidance and self-injury, convulsion, gaze avoidance, fever, convulsion, disinterest, lack of play, fever, recurrent viral pneumonia for 8 weeks. Age of onset at first symptom. Behavioral and bowel. Jesus, how are you linking the bowel stuff to this? It's so few people. They've got 12 people, and they have 1 bowel symptom, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 12 even have these bowel symptoms. Jesus Christ. Okay. Is the vaccine scheduled? Do they all get the MMR vaccines at like different times or something as well, or? Okay. Jesus. In 8 children, the onset of behavioral problems has been linked either by parents or by the child's physician with measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination. 5 had had an early adverse reaction to immunization, rash, fever, delirium, and in 3 cases, convulsions. In these 8 children, the average interval from exposure to first behavioral symptoms were 6.3 days, range from 1 to 14. Damn, we're really stretching the numbers, or like it's just so few people, but okay. Parents were less clear about the timing of onset of abdominal symptoms because children were not toilet trained at the time, or because behavioral features made children unable to communicate symptoms. 1 child, child 4, had received monovalent measles vaccine at 15 months, after which his development slowed, confirmed by professional assessors. No association was made with the vaccine at this time. He received a dose of measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine at age 4.5 years, the day after which his mother described a striking deterioration in his behavior that she did link with the immunization. Child 9 received MMR vaccine at 16 months. At 18 months, he developed recurrent antibiotic biotic to crescent otitis media. This is some kind of ear infection. Holy fucking shit. God damn it. Oh, wait, it's antibiotic resistant. They just didn't put the thing. Jesus. Okay. Antibiotic resistant ear infection. And the first behavioral symptoms, including disinterest in his sibling and lack of play. What was the sibling? Uninteresting? Table 2 summarizes the psychiatric diagnoses and apparent precipitating events, onset of behavioral features, and age of onset of both behavior and bowel symptoms. Laboratory tests. All children were anti-endomysial antibody negative, and common and enteric pathogens were not identified by culture, microscopy, or serology. Urinary methylmalonic acid excretion was significantly raised in all 8 children who were tested compared with age-matched controls. Abnormal laboratory tests are shown in Table 1. Controls and patients. Okay, that was just for this one urinary thing. Endoscopic findings. The casein was seen in all cases, and the ileum in all but 2 cases. Endoscopic findings are shown in Table 1. Macroscopic colonic appearances were reported as normal in 4 children. The remaining 8 had colonic and rectal gozal abnormalities, including granularity, loss of vascular pattern, patchy erythema, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is all. And then histological findings. A reactive lymphoid follicular hypoplasia was present in the allele biopsies of 7 children. In each case, more than 3 expanded and confluent lymphoid follicles with reactive germinal centers were identified within the tissue section. There was no neutrophil infiltrate, and granulomas were not present. Okay. Colon, lamina, there was no clear correlation between the endoscopic appearances and the histological findings. Chronic inflammatory changes were apparent histologically and endoscopically normal areas of the colon. In 5 cases, there was focal acute inflammation with infiltration of the lamina propria by neutrophils. In 3 of these, neutrophils infiltrated. There's no granula. Okay, Jesus. Discussion. We describe a pattern of colitis and ileolymphoid nodular hypoplasia in children with developmental disorders. Intestinal and behavioral pathologies may have occurred together by chance, reflecting a selection bias in a self-referred group. However, the uniformity of the intestinal pathological changes and the fact that previous studies have found intestinal dysfunction in children with autistic spectrum disorder suggests that the connection is real and reflects a unique disease process. Patterns? Like sometimes they have like 5 or 6 kids of the 12 that they have from this group that are exhibiting some of these things. Pattern, I feel like, is a strong, I feel like that's a really strong statement to be made there, but okay. I feel like ordinarily when I read these things, usually they're referencing other studies here. They don't link any or cite any, but I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter for a small paper like this. Asperger's first recorded the link between celiac disease and behavioral psychoses. Okay, here's a paper. Okay, so another, I don't care. Fuck that. Walker Smith and colleagues detected low concentrations of alpha-1 antitrypsin in children with typical autism, and Deifemia and colleagues identified abnormal intestinal permeability. Okay, these are the studies that they're citing that they're referring to up here, basically. Detected low concentration of alpha-1 antitrypsin in children with typical autism, and Deifemia and colleagues identified abnormal intestinal permeability, a feature of small intestinal entropathy, and 43% of a group of autistic children with no gastrointestinal symptoms, but not in matched controls. These studies, together with our own, including evidence of anemia and IgA deficiency in some children, would support the hypothesis that the consequences of an inflamed or dysfunctional intestine may play a part in behavioral changes in some children. The opioid excess theory of autism, put forward first by Panksepp and colleagues, and later by Rickelt and colleagues and Shadok and colleagues proposes that autistic disorders result from the incomplete breakdown and excessive absorption of gut-derived peptides from foods, including barley, rye, oats, and casein from milk and dairy. Casein? From milk and dairy produce. These peptides may exert central opioid effects directly or through the formation of ligands with peptidase enzymes required for breakdown of endogenous central nervous system opioids, leading to disruption of normal neuroregulation and brain development by endogenous encephalins and endorphins. Okay. One aspect of impaired intestinal function that could permit increased permeability to exogenous peptides is deficiency of the phenyl sulfur transferase systems as described by Waring. The normally sulfated glycoprotein matrix of the gut wall acts to regulate cell and molecular trafficking. Disruption of this matrix and increased intestinal permeability, both features of inflammatory bowel disease, may cause intestinal and neuropsychiatric dysfunction. Impaired enterohepatic sulfation and consequent detoxification of compounds such as the phenolic amines, dopamine, tyramine, and serotonin may also contribute. Both the presence of intestinal inflammation and absence of detectable neurological abnormality in our children are consistent with the exogenous influence upon cerebral function. Lucarelli's observation that after removal of provocative enteric antigen, children achieved symptomatic behavioral improvement suggests a reversible element in the condition. Okay. Got it. 100%. Okay. Where are we at on this research now? Like, is it still believed that basically fuck-ups in the gut are like a contributing factor to autism? Or... Destiny, no. It's only used by retards, mostly genetic. Okay. Okay. Disintegrative psychosis is recognized as a sequel to measles encephalitis, although in most cases, no cause is ever identified. Viral encephalitis can give rise to autistic disorders, particularly when it occurs early in life. Rubella virus is associated with autism, and the combined measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, rather than monovalent measles vaccine, has also been implicated. From this study? Good one. Fudenberg noted that for 15 of 20 autistic children, the first symptoms developed within a week of vaccination. Gupta commented on the striking association between measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination and the onset of behavioral symptoms in all the children that he had investigated for regressive autism. Measles virus and measles vaccination have both been implicated as risk factors for Crohn's disease, and persistent measles vaccine strain virus infection has been found in children with autoimmune hepatitis. Okay. Feels like everything is associated with fucking autism in this, but okay. We did not prove an association between measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and the syndrome described. Virological studies are underway that may help resolve this issue. If there is a causal link between measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and this syndrome, a rising incidence might be anticipated after the introduction of the vaccine. In the UK in 1988, published evidence is inadequate to show whether there is a change in incidence or a link with measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. A genetic predisposition to autism spectrum disorders is suggested by overrepresentation in boys and a greater concordance rate in monozygotic than in dizygotic twins. Dizygotic twins? Monozygotic versus dizygotic? Dizygotic? In the context of susceptibility to infection, a genetic association with autism linked to a null allele of the complement C4b gene located in the class 3 region of the major histocompatibility complex has been recorded by Warren and colleagues are crucial for the activation. C4b gene products are crucial for the activation of the complement pathway and protection against infection. Individuals inheriting one or two C4b null alleles may not handle certain viruses appropriately, possibly including attenuated strains. So this is the explanation for how this vaccine could theoretically happen to cause this, I guess, or the disease itself, huh? Urinary methylmalonic acid concentrations were raised in most of the children, a finding indicative of a functional vitamin B12 deficiency, although vitamin B12 concentrations were normal. Serum B12 is not a good measure of functional B12 status. Urinary methylmalonic acid excretion is increased in disorders such as Crohn's disease, in which cobalamin excreted in bile is not reabsorbed. A similar problem may have occurred in the children in our study. Vitamin B12 is essential for myelinogenesis in the developing central nervous system. A process is not complete until around the age of 10 years. B12 deficiency may therefore be a contributing factor in developmental regression. We've identified a chronic enterocolitis in children that may be related to neuropsychiatric dysfunction. In most cases, onset of symptoms was after measles, mumps, and rubella immunization. Further investigations are needed to examine the syndrome and its possible relation to the vaccine. Okay, Jesus Christ. Oh God, don't put me on this train. I don't think anything is necessarily, well, hold on. Unless something was done in the background that was bad. This seems like an okay paper. I don't think there's, I don't immediately see anything that's like super wrong or off about this. I wonder what was the presentation of the paper? What did they say? Because they said that people were ass pained because of the presentation. Is there a link to, how did they present this paper publicly? The problems, they didn't have an unvaccinated or typically developing control group. They ignored the autism symptoms coincide temporally with when autism signs first present. They did a battery of tests on only 12 subjects, which makes finding random shit inevitable. They didn't do even basic hypothesis testing for the primary question, no control group. And they made leaps from descriptive findings to speculative mechanisms. I mean, like, it's not like an amazing paper, but at least as it's written, it doesn't seem to make any ultra strong claims. It's 12 kids. I mean, this just seems like there's tons of papers written with where you just have like a few subjects and you analyze them and then it's like for further investigation. But it feels like the discussion session or the discussion section seems like pretty controlled. Just watch the small amount of this excellent 7 minutes about
1998.
An article was published in The Lancet that followed the cases of 12 children with developmental regression and gastrointestinal symptoms, such as diarrhea or stomach pain. 9 of these children had autism, and 8 of the 9 had parents who thought the symptoms of their autism had developed after the vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella, or the MMR vaccine, was administered. This was not a randomized controlled trial, nor even a scientific study. It was merely a description of a small group of children.
I'm outside of my area here. I don't know if I'm comfortable saying it wasn't even a scientific study. Lots of like studies on early medical shit are like sample size 4, like here's 4 kids we found, we analyzed them, here's a bunch of tests or whatever. Like Is it like a massive, prospective study with double-blind? No, but like there's a ton of papers and a ton of research, I think, that's written about stuff like this. You just have to be aware of the limitations. But again, reading the paper itself, now again, there might be other things about this, which I guess we'll get into. Like this conclusion is, it feels okay enough. We have identified a chronic enterocolitis in children. So something that's lasting for, I don't know, chronic and acute. It's like more than a couple of weeks. So it's a long-lasting. This is an inflammation of like the large and small intestine. Of the small intestine and colitis of the colon. Okay. If it goes from the small intestine to the colon, that means small, large, right? Okay, so we've identified a chronic enterocolitis in children. So inflammation in all of your bowel shit and your rectum in children that may be related to neuropsychiatric dysfunction. So it might be that these things here are related to the autism stuff that's happening. In most cases, the onset of symptoms was after the measles, mumps, and rubella immunization, which seems to be true, but that could just be correlated. Like symptoms tend to start here, and this is also when you get vaccinated for this thing. And then it says, further investigations are needed to examine this syndrome and its possible relation to this vaccine. This seems like fairly measured. But, okay. All right, hold on.
To be honest, it's difficult to imagine that this study could get published in The Lancet today. But based on the beliefs of the parents...
I don't know how much The Lancet publishes like very, very, very small things like this. But 1998 wasn't that long ago. This is volume 351. I don't know how many super small papers or like pilot studies are published in The Lancet, so I have no idea.
And of those 8 children, a frenzy of fear about vaccines and autism has ensued for more than a decade. That's the topic of this week's Healthcare Triage. Let me start with some caveats. I'm a pediatrician and a health services researcher. I see kids with autism. I treat kids with autism. I've even been part of funded NIH research to improve the ways we screen for and diagnose autism in children. It's a real condition that is increasing in prevalence and has a significant impact on children and families across the world. I do not deny in any way that we need to do more about autism, but it has nothing to do with vaccines. And every dollar that we waste on that topic is a dollar we can't spend on important research or treatment to help children with autism and their families. The initial article I mentioned in The Lancet was not a study. It had no real statistics and proved no association or causation. But it caused so much concern that it led to a...
Yeah, but it also didn't say that. It didn't say that.
A whole bunch of real studies to combat it. Just 1 year later, in 1999, a study was published in the same journal. No difference was seen in the age of diagnosis for those who did and did not receive vaccines. That meant that either there was no association between MMR and autism, or that it was too weak an association to be detected even in a larger sample of children. Some were unimpressed. They still were concerned. In 2001, a study was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association that looked at data on over 10,000 kindergartners born in California from 1980 through 1994. The incidence of autism over that time increased...
What was the point of the study then? Well, it sounds like back here, it sounds like these guys... It sounds like the theory at the time, or maybe this was a disproven theory, I don't know, but it sounds like the theory at the time was that... I'm just trying to think of how much I can remember here. There is something in your body that helps you digest some protein or whatever, or contributes to the absorption of something in your bowels. If this thing gets fucked up, or if the bowel wall or whatever gets fucked up, or it can't absorb something correctly, that it causes either an under or an overabsorption of this thing, and that is linked to or tied to some sort of neurodevelopmental fuck up or whatever. It seems like that was the theory at the time, and so that's what they were like testing for. And then there is a link to certain diseases, and there was a link to certain diseases related to measles, mumps, and rubella, and the body's response to it that could lead to these things basically being fucked in your gut. And they were running off of this, the opioid excess theory of autism, which again, I don't know if this is even believed anymore, that had to do with how if your body processes things in the gut in a shitty manner, basically, shitty, get it, then so that it could lead to things, neurodevelopmental issues, or degenerative issues, I guess, if you would call autism that. Proposed that autistic disorders result from the incomplete breakdown and excessive absorption of gut-derived peptides from foods, including barley, rye, oats, and casein from milk and dairy products. And these peptides that are absorbed may exert central opioid effects, so fuck up your development. Ugh, okay. So it was a small investigation of that on its face. Now that's reading this paper in good faith. I don't know any of the background or what that one investigator found, so let's just
over 10,000 kindergartners born in California from 1980 through 1994. The incidence of autism over that time increased from 44 per 100,000 births to 208 per 100,000 births. That's a 373% increase. MMR coverage, on the other hand, rose from 72% to 82%, a relative rise of only 14%. It was determined in this study that the relatively small increase in MMR could not possibly be responsible for the huge increase seen in autism. The next year, in 2002, a study was published in the New England Journal of Medicine that followed all children born in Denmark from 1991 through 1998. They obtained data on over 537,000 children born in those years. They could find no association between the development of autism and the age of vaccination, the time since vaccination, or even the date of vaccination. That same year, a similar study was published in the journal Pediatrics. It followed over 535,000 children in Finland, born between 1982 and 1986. It too could find no association between the MMR vaccine and autism. In 2004, The Lancet published another study, which matched 1,294 kids with autism against 4,469 kids without it. They found no relationship between the MMR vaccine and autism. In 2004, 10 of the 12 authors of that first Lancet paper retracted the supposition that the MMR vaccine could cause autism. This kind of thing is unbelievably rare in the medical literature. An 11th author retracted the supposition that the MMR vaccine could cause autism. This kind of thing is unbelievably rare in the medical literature. An 11th author could not be contacted before the retraction. Only one researcher, the main one in fact, held firm. For the record, that researcher is no longer licensed to practice medicine in the United Kingdom. In 2005, a systematic review or study of studies examining the effectiveness and unintended effects after a thorough investigation, even in autism. And in 2012, they updated their work. This time, the research they found included 5 randomized control trials, one case study, and another study. No matter how the age the kids get particular shots, they want to put those things together. Parents watch kids more carefully after they get shots. Sometimes they pick up on symptoms then. But just because two things happen at the same time, many such studies that have how that 1998 Lancet paper, he found that there were discrepancies as to whether the children actually had. It wasn't just junk science, it was a lie. All because of one paper, a decade and a half ago, that described the beliefs of the parents of 8 children with autism. And that's what makes the next part in this all the more tragic. In 2011, the British Medical Journal released an article which described in detail how that 1998 Lancet paper wasn't just junk science, it was a lie. It described how the main author, the only one who still supports its findings, changed the records, changed the stories, and changed the numbers to create the appearance of an association where none existed. The journalist who wrote the BMJ article tracked down the patients in the study and showed how none of their stories or information matched up to what was published in the final paper. He found that there were discrepancies as to whether the children actually had regressive autism. He found that there were falsifications and other symptoms that were alleged to cause the autism. He even discovered that dates had been changed. Although the Lancet paper alleged that 8 of the 12 patients reported symptoms days after the MMR vaccine, the BMJ investigation confirmed.
That was a big part, remember. I don't know if I say days, but within a week, right? The interval from exposure to first behavioral symptom, right? Was when did you get the vaccine, and then when was your first symptom? 1 week, 2 weeks, 48 hours, immediately after the MMR vaccine, 2 months, 1 week, 1 day, 2 weeks, 1 week, 1 day, 1 week. That was a big one.
The Lancet paper alleged that 8 of the 12 patients reported symptoms days after the MMR vaccine. The BMJ investigation confirmed that for almost all of these children, that wasn't the case. And if that wasn't bad enough, it turned out that all of the patients had been recruited by anti-MMR campaigners. The study was also commissioned and paid for by a group that planned litigation against the vaccine manufacturers. The British Medical Journal called the original Lancet paper a fraud. It's easy to become cynical about people's loss of trust and understanding in science, to the point that you think it's unlikely that we will ever be able to convince some people that the MMR vaccine is safe. That's a tragedy in and of itself. It's easy to believe that the perpetrator of this fraud will not suffer the repercussions he deserves. Many still continue to lionize him and believe him to be a victim of some powerful cabal. It's hard for me to be dispassionate about those who abuse the trust people give physicians. I get even more riled up when someone violates the rules of ethical science. I think it's likely that children have not been given an MMR vaccine because of this fraud. I think it's likely children have gotten sick because of this fraud. I think it's likely some children have died. I hope we can find some way to change that.
Well, at least I didn't die of autism.